The Toronto Dominion Center is made up of 6 skyscrapers, each designed to withstand the brutal Canadian winters, the heavy winds, and the unrelenting force of time. Inside one of those towers, on the 24th floor, a group of law students eagerly follows a senior partner through the corridors of Holden Day Wilson, once one of the most prestigious law firms in Canada. The students are nervous, excited. This is their chance to impress, to make connections, to maybe even secure a future in law. It was the dream of every law student to be a part of a firm with such a successful reputation. So it's likely that all the students were grateful for the opportunity. And leading them is Garry Hoy. He was a brilliant, successful, and charming lawyer at the height of his career. What they didn't know, what no one could predict, was that this tour would be vastly different than any other. It was the one that would never be forgotten. Garry Hoy wasn't your typical lawyer. At 39, he had already built a reputation as one of the firm's most charismatic figures. He was a senior partner, meaning he wasn't just any lawyer. He was one of the big names, someone who had worked his way up through the ranks since 1979. This was the result of being incredibly hardworking, as most lawyers don't make partner in their 30s and are honestly considered lucky if they make it in their 40s or at all. His work ethic was undeniable. He was intelligent, and as cliche as it sounds, he was the kind of person who really lit up a room. Garry loved being the center of attention. People would want to be around him, and he loved being everyone's go-to source of entertainment. His outgoing nature likely played a major role in how quickly he made partner. Garry wasn't just a lawyer. He had also had a background in engineering, and that knowledge shaped the way he saw the world. He had a deep appreciation for architecture, for the physics behind the structures that surrounded him every day, and in his mind, the building his office was in, the skyscraper that he spent more than 8 hours working out of every day, to him, it was nearly impenetrable. This belief led to the stunt that he became infamous for, and it's kind of crazy to think about that, actually. Had he not spent years studying engineering, had he not been interested in it enough to make it a hobby, who knows if we'd be here discussing his story today. Sure, he may have still been wild enough to end up where he did, but maybe without the interest in the first place, his mind wouldn't have thought about challenging the norm. Now, every office has its quirks or fun little traditions. Some workplaces have birthday pranks, others have inside jokes that span generations of employees. For an out-of-the-box thinker like Garry, it makes sense that his version of office tradition was something unheard of. It started as a simple demonstration, something he thought would be a fun, shocking joke. He'd tell people how strong the skyscraper's windows were, that no one could break them, that they were reinforced and designed to handle pressure, wind, and even direct impact. Now, Garry was about his business, so instead of just saying it, he took it one step further. He could prove it. He'd take a running start and throw himself full force at the glass. Every time without fail, he'd bounce right off. And of course, he got the reactions he wanted, so the new tradition continued exactly the way he expected. No cracks, no breaks, no damage, which of course fueled his confidence. In his mind, he was safe, and time after time, it remained that way. Garry started doing it at work parties, during office gatherings, and most notably, during law student tours. Newcomers to the firm would watch in horror, gasping as they saw a full-grown man launch himself at the window. Some would shriek, laughing in relief when nothing horrible happened, and I'm sure those who worked in the office day after day grew bored with the stunt. Because, he's doing it so often, they're used to it by now. Nothing's gonna happen. With every new and shocked reaction he got, Garry decided this is what he would live for. So he kept doing it. He thought it was so funny. Everyone else thought it was so funny. So why not? It became his thing, a bizarre, dangerous, and completely unique party trick. So on July 9th, 1993, it started out like any other day for him. It was business as usual at Holden Day Wilson. Garry had a tour scheduled for a group of law students considering internships at the firm, something students look forward to for months at a time, sometimes years. Landing a spot there was very coveted. But for Garry, it was more than just a boring tour. It was an audience. It was more people to watch him do this stunt, and their reactions fueled his decision to do it again and again. As they made their way around the office, his favorite prank took place. He took a few steps back, got a running start, and he hurled himself at the window. And like always, it held. Relief flooded the room. The students were initially shocked, like anyone would be, but ultimately they laughed as they realized it was just a joke. But then he did something out of character, even for him, something he'd never done before. He did it again. Another running start, another crash right into the window, and this time the glass didn't break. The entire window pane dislodged from its frame, and in the blink of an eye, Garry Hoy was gone, plunging to his death from the 24th floor over a prank taken too far. It's estimated that his fall lasted approximately 4 seconds, and who knows what he was thinking in those last moments, if he had any time to think at all. There are no known first-hand accounts of hearing him yell out, and it's honestly unlikely that he could even process what was happening before he hit the ground. I imagine those 4 seconds either felt like a blink or an eternity, assuming he didn't pass out as soon as the window gave out. We can only guess when it comes to the kind of terror he may have felt, the realization that this time, something had gone horribly wrong. Garry Hoy hit the pavement below. He was killed instantly. Now, there's at least some solace in the fact that he didn't suffer. He didn't land on anyone below, and there was no prolonged death once he was on the ground. In an instant, he was just gone. Inside the office, chaos erupted. Now, for reference, falling from the 24th floor is the equivalent to about 300 feet or 91 meters. The students, who had come for a simple tour, had just watched a man plummet to his death. Shock was an understatement. His coworkers rushed to the windows, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Now keep in mind, this was a 160-pound man running full force at the same window on a semi-regular basis, and who knows how many times he tested the strength of that window before it finally gave in. Ironically, he was right in his assumption that the window would hold. After his death, it was found that the glass never broke or shattered. The entire pane had been weakened over time by Garry himself, and it busted out of the frame during his last stunt. Garry had worked there almost 14 years at the time of his death, and although there are no reports on when his window testing obsession started, we can assume that the frame held as long as it possibly could, after probably a decade of him bouncing off of it. Structural engineers and investigators were able to determine that the window itself held no fault. The frame was inevitably going to warp and break down under those circumstances. Skyscraper windows are indestructible in the sense that, yes, they are made of polycarbonate material, which is more durable than traditional glass, and they're equipped with heavy, thick framing, but they're not made to endure years of the kind of force Garry had put on that window, especially without repairing that frame pretty often. In the days and weeks that followed, Holden Wilson was never the same. Everyone who knew Garry had nothing but praise for the kind of man he was. He was loved by colleagues and incredibly respected in his career, which made his death even harder to swallow. He was described by peers as a bright light within the firm and a generous person who cared about others. The death of Garry Hoy wasn't just a tragic accident, it was a deep wound that the firm couldn't recover from. Employees left in droves. More than 30 lawyers quit soon after his stunt. And within 3 years, in 1996, the once powerful firm shut down forever. At the time, it was considered the largest law firm closure in Canada, in all of Canada. So just think about that for a second. What he thought was a fun little prank changed history. The impact of one man's death had brought an entire institution to its knees, and the staff that were present that day, they were never the same after that. Here's some of the stranger parts of Garry Hoy's story, at least to me. Over time, his story has been retold like a game of telephone, with the facts getting misconstrued and turning into a lighthearted joke. Some believe that this story is an urban legend or a Canadian myth meant to keep people away from high rise windows. His experience was even featured in a few comedy skits, some painting him to be like a smug creep who did it to impress women specifically, which I found no basis in. No one had anything to say that would back that up. None of the depictions of Garry in sensational media were accurate. Everyone who knew him had nothing but nice things to say. So it's kind of disheartening seeing how they've twisted what happened after the fact. He was a real person, and making a mockery of the traumatic way he ended his life on accident really takes away from the trauma that everyone that was there had to deal with. Garry wasn't the only victim, and of course, throwing himself out the window was stupid, we can all agree, but the witnesses to his death, some of them never emotionally recovered. A lot of them completely changed their career paths. I mean, the entire business of Hollandaise shut down. Those law students were innocent bystanders who had no idea what was going to happen. So all of it is just, it's a lot. Sometime after his death, he was given a Darwin Award, the quote unquote award that means the deceased improved the species by removing themselves from the gene pool. It's given as a joke for people who have died in idiotic, often self-inflicted ways. And like I mentioned earlier, what he did was dumb, we can all agree. But I do think that the media tends to take it a little bit too far and forget that we're discussing real people's stories. Some people think that Garry deserved his fate. A man with 2 degrees who is clearly extremely intelligent, throwing himself out a window repeatedly. Who could be surprised by that outcome, right? Now, I'm not here to say that what he did was smart. I'm just saying that we can all agree reckless acts in the name of getting a giggle out of someone often don't end well. It's just important to remember that his death didn't only affect him and his family. It affected everyone who was there that day. Their entire lives were changed in a split second. The impact his death had on witnesses and the community as a whole, it tends to be understated because it is easy to laugh at. In the end, Garry Hoy was a seemingly perfectly nice, normal guy who made bad decisions, and he paid the ultimate price before he could even see it coming. He wasn't just a careless thrill seeker. He was a brilliant lawyer, a respected colleague, and a beloved friend. His story is one to remember, serving as a reminder that sometimes the risk just simply isn't worth the reward.